Welcome, Bridge Builders, to another episode of the podcast. I have in studio with me today Ashton Smith. We are related to each other in a very distant way.
By two marriages.
By two marriages. My wife and his wife, their grandmothers are sisters. So, if you can follow that.
So we're second cousins, in-law.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. Cool. Anyway, excited to have Ashton on the show today. Talk to us a little about his experiences in the church and how he's been working as being a bridge builder. So just a reminder to like and subscribe and to share this episode with your friends and family. Put it on your social medias, and it's much appreciated. If you can financially support the podcast, there is a link in the description below. Thanks. All right, Ashton, welcome to Latter-day Bridge Builders.
Thank you.
How have you been?
Been good. It's a little nerve-wracking. I've never done anything like this.
Sure.
But I am passionate about building bridges.
Cool.
So happy to be here, excited, and ready to have, I guess, one episode under my belt that I'm more comfortable with this.
There you go. Yeah, just think about it. We're just talking.
Yep.
It's just being recorded and people are listening in.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
Perfect.
All right. Well, give us a little bit about your background or like whatever kind of story you wanted to start off with.
Sure. I should have prepared a little more. Definitely born and raised in the mainstream LDS church. Come to find out as an adult, looking back and hearing other people's experiences, I was raised pretty orthodox. And I think just over the years, gaining new perspective and having broader conversations, I think there's a lot to learn from each other, whatever the background is.
Right.
Currently, as far as church and something maybe that we connected on that when I was listening to your podcast, so I'm currently Elders Quorum president in my ward in South Ogden, and I've learned a lot there, and I've come to appreciate the service and the community building, and that's what I'm really passionate about. So I've loved the experience. It's been a lot of difficult things over the last year or so, and learned so much, and I'd love to share my perspective now, hopefully help someone in my position 5 years ago.
Sure.
Maybe gain a little bit of insight and perspective as well.
Okay. Very cool. Elders Quorum president. That's I've never been that high of a calling, so I can only imagine what it's like.
Busy.
Yeah. How's like your activity ratio, if you would say, like, you know, you got the whole roster of like your elders, like the men, at least in the ward. Would you say it's like 50 active, 50 attending? Like,
I don't even know.
If you even know. Okay. I'm just
know.
curious, but
yeah.
Okay.
We probably have about 25, 30 that come to the Elders Quorum meetings.
Sure.
And then there are a bunch in primary and young men. So
Okay.
I don't know across the board as far as numbers, but
Okay.
it's a good group.
Cool. Very good.
We've been trying to build a really good culture of openness and discussion, and I think that's showing as far as people who are comfortable being there and sharing their insights and perspective too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Where did you want to start?
I'm a notes guy. I was just mentioning that to Mitch earlier. So a quote. So I first came across this. My wife and I were watching Wandla. It's an Apple TV series.
Okay.
Animated. And I highly recommend it. But
Okay.
There's a quote in there that went something along the lines of, "There is no them and us. There is only us." And as I was researching a little more, there's a man, Gregory Boyle, who is a Christian preacher, I guess, and it kind of originates with him as far as I can track down. But I love that. I think there's something about when it's an us and them mentality that it's divisive inherently.
Sure.
But if we consider the person that we're talking to, even though we may share different beliefs or different opinions about something, that if we consider it just as us, then the bridges, as we're talking in this context, can be built a lot more naturally.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's it's just such a, I think it comes from evolution personally, you know, like insider groups, outsider groups. If you're part of the tribe, you're one of us. If you're not, then you're a threat, right? And you see that everywhere with like xenophobia, you know, people immigrating to whatever country you're in, the outsiders are seen as like a threat. And so it's a very difficult thing to, I think it's just an inherent bias that we probably all have. And it takes a lot of effort to really check that, you know.
And it serves a function at times, and evolutionarily it probably did.
Yeah.
But I think we're at a time where we can get past that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, are you, what are maybe some experiences that you've had recently with kind of bridge building? Like,
Sure, yeah.
if you can think of it.
One thing that I wanted to talk about just happened this last week.
Okay.
So a friend from high school, he and I just did different things. He got married, I got married, and we hadn't seen each other for a lot of years. We ran into each other just randomly at a store about a year ago, and we got each other's numbers and finally reconnected just this last week or so. And he was telling me a little bit about his experience over the last few years, that he had a faith transition, and obviously there's multiple sides to each story, but his experience was that his family just, I don't know, just, I guess to me, using a harsh term, just rejected him. And he said this year was the first year in many years that they've gotten together for Thanksgiving.
Wow.
So, and that just breaks my heart, because I know him, I know his family.
Yeah.
I think they're all individually great people and collectively great people. And he told me an experience of another friend of his that they've been close friends since they were 9. And he said that they got together for lunch, and the friend just said, you know, if you're not going to be in the church, I don't know if our relationship has any value or any viability. And that just tears me up a lot.
Yeah.
Emotionally, because he and I are friends, and I wish we'd connected a little sooner, that just for me to communicate to him, you know, our relationship is not conditional on your beliefs. It's not conditional on your values and standards if they're different than mine, but because we share history, we do share many values, even though our beliefs may be a little different.
Right.
But our relationship isn't conditional on that difference, but
Yeah.
on the shared humanity first of all, and then a lot of the shared values as well. So
Wow. Yeah, those kind of stories are kind of the reason I started this whole thing.
yeah.
Some that I had personally, hearing about other people, like luckily my family still, you know, talks with me and so forth, and I really appreciate that. But there's something about belief and have you read Sapiens? The book
I have listened to that on audiobook.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that book a lot. And he goes a lot into like myth is probably the biggest aspect of humanity that brings people together, right? Like our money system wouldn't work without the shared myth that this piece of paper is actually worth something, right?
Okay.
So it's all over the place, but when it comes to like religious beliefs, is very often divisive for some reason. And I think there's like bits and pieces that I know why maybe, but then there's like so much that I just don't quite understand it, you know? I'm not sure do you agree?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have any other things to add as far as answers to the question, but that I share the question
Yeah.
as to why.
Got to think about it a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing those stories. It's unfortunate that has happened to those people in your life. And I guess the more people that we have out there like yourself, like trying actively to like, hey, I don't really care what you believe. I hope you don't care what I believe, to a degree, right? But that we can still be friends and have a relationship. I think that's very admirable.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, cool.
Well, if you don't mind, maybe I'll just start reading some notes and
Sure. Yeah, we can go off.
maybe interject and just some foundational principles for bridge building, which I think are applicable beyond just religion and beyond just Mormonism, but politically, obviously, religiously, socially.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
So I'm going to read some of these.
Sure. Go ahead.
Keep me on track. I believe that many people want to build bridges, but it's a wide open, vulnerable place with the risk of criticism and rejection from both sides of the bridge. You're kind of putting yourself between two perspectives, and if you put yourself in the middle, you can take hits from both sides. And so I've experienced a little bit of that. I'm obviously well within the mainstream church right now, but I'm trying to make some of those connections there. I deeply feel that if I had the same experiences that someone else had, I likely would make very similar choices.
Yeah.
And the differences or the disagreements that I might have in someone's choices is based on my own background. That if I knew their background, it'd be perfectly reasonable.
Right.
Yeah.
Who are we to judge?
Yeah.
That coming into the middle aspect, I think what can be hard about it is by getting into the middle of the bridge, you're all of a sudden closer to the other side, right? And maybe we feel like there's this risk that I will be dragged back over there, like this game of what's that game?
Red Rover, maybe?
Red Rover, capture the flag. If you're on the other side, you can get tagged and kind of stuff like that. I don't know, this idea that if I am showing empathy and kindness to those who believe on a very polar opposite of what I believe, there's people behind me on my side, quote unquote, that are looking at me what are you doing? Traitor? I don't know, in a way. And then maybe there's other people on the other side oh, maybe we can get him over here or something. But it's what if we just meet in the middle and we can just chat, instead of having again, bridge the gap and bring it closer, bring us both closer together.
Such strict lines between our teams.
Right.
Versus having a neutral space of, that mutual respect.
Yeah.
Kind of changing the rules to the game a little bit.
Yeah.
Making it a little broader than
the
us and them we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. And we're very, very adamant about knowing well, where are you? What's your title? Are you Ex-Mormon? Are you Latter-day Saint? Are you what? So it's interesting at the very least.
It is. So along those same lines, to start building a bridge, it needs to start with one party, but ultimately completing the bridge requires both parties' consent and effort. So if one person wants to build a bridge and the other doesn't, you can't force the other party to meet you there.
Right.
And ultimately that kind of defeat the purpose of building a bridge if it's by force.
Right. I agree.
And so, and that's a hard thing to accept, but it can be counterproductive if we try to force that, and it pushes people away instead of bringing closer together. And sometimes people just need a little space, and I'm speaking from personal experience. Sometimes I just need a little space to process, feel safe again, and then we can meet here.
Yeah, I agree.
We're safe. We're good. We still have a relationship. You know?
Yeah, I think a good mindset maybe is they don't want to talk to me right now.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean in the future they won't, because people change, right?
Yep.
So,
and then one other step as far as being in the Elders Quorum presidency, that now I'm somewhat facilitating other people's conflicts, and it's I don't want to be a parent, I don't want to be a dictator of how someone should act, right? Sure. But more of an advocate, maybe for each party if there's a misunderstanding. And as far as the visual of building a bridge, I think we can act as mediators or advocates for each party who feels like it may be an us and them, not feeling safe, and trying to get us to let's look at it from the same side and see that we're all fellows here. Mm-hmm. We're all living life. We're all doing our best. And maybe we have some conflicts here that we can resolve as adults.
Right.
Same principle applies there. You can't force either party if you're acting as an advocate between the parties. You can't force either party who's not willing to do that.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth giving it a try. And then again, going back to that idea of me taking personal space, if either of the parties that I'm advocating for just needs some space, that's fine too. If you can't respect someone mutually, you can respect their space. And I think that allows for that growth to happen individually, that maybe down the road productive conversation can happen. Whereas if you try and force it now, those conversations might be cut off for the future.
Right. Yeah, I like that. That's a good way to put it. You said, if you can't respect their side, respect their space.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a visual guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I know it's hard for the audience that might only listen by audio, but if everyone's familiar with a Venn diagram, you're familiar with
I'm
the Venn
familiar with the Venn
diagram.
diagram.
So two circles that have some shared space, right?
Yeah. Overlapping.
Overlapping space, but then some space that is individual and separate from the other circle.
Right.
So for me, something that I've learned recently, even in my relationship with my wife, that we share a lot of common space, but there are some crescents on each of our circles that we see things differently.
Sure.
And often we retreat to our own far extreme away from the other instead of acknowledging that shared common space.
Mm.
And I think that's a natural thing. Again, when we get emotionally charged and feeling like we're being personally attacked, we look for the differences oftentimes instead of finding that common ground. And I think this goes for any human. When you compare any two humans, there are no two people that are so different that they don't have at least some common space
Sure.
that they can relate on.
Yeah.
And there are no people that are so the same that they don't have some differences
Right.
on those extremes
Right.
either. And I think acknowledging that, helps you identify where you're at and then connect on those things that are common and respect the things that are different.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. It's I see, so putting the podcast back out there, and I'm a little bit more active on social media and stuff, like I get comments from both sides, quote unquote, of the belief spectrum, and it's those crescents, like the extremes, they become very apparent. They also kind of seem to get the most interaction. Like you think of any viral video, it's usually when something very controversial has been said or whatever. And it's, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out like how to like deal with that on the online space as like the moderator of these comments and so forth. 'Cause like I want everyone to be like able to speak their mind, and also like this is a space where we're trying to bring people together.
Yeah.
Like if you're actively kind of saying things like, no matter what, like this church hurt my family, like they're ex-phobic, whatever, transphobic, homophobic, whatever. I'm not saying like I'm disagreeing with that. I'm just saying like we need to acknowledge that, and we also need to be able to, let's bring down the level a little bit so that the other side doesn't just feel like this media attack is like, well, like those are very heavy words, very charged at me. Like you don't know me individually. You're just like putting a broad stroke over my church and their beliefs, if you could put it that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It could be difficult, and I'm still trying to figure it out. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that specifically.
I think, well, I've got a couple of thoughts if I can keep them straight
Sure.
while going into each of them. I think when it comes to extreme comments,
Mm-hmm.
extreme comments are often very clear. And I think when we're in the middle between the extremes, it can get a little messy, and you're trying to explain something in a way that's easily misunderstood if you don't have the background of the person saying it.
Sure.
Where if you say something extreme, that this was my experience, therefore it is this way, it's very clear what you think if that's what you're sharing.
Yeah.
Versus having an openness to, I don't know, this is my experience, but it's not everyone's experience. So what is kind of the reality that we're sharing here?
Yeah.
So that's my thought there. I lost my other thought.
You're
I
good.
wondered if I would.
Don't worry about it. No, yeah, it's like on the other side, I'll get sometimes believing members like just put a bunch of scriptures down and say like, woe unto the liar, and like kind of stuff like that. It's like, all right, that's like, I get where you're coming from, like, again, and can we bring it down a little bit? Like, let's, but this, what you said, kind of like being messy in there, it's like the gradient of black to white, and there's that gray, there's that nuance. By definition, nuance is messy, and it's not clear and cut and dry, so it can be hard to get your side and your point across when you're standing somewhere in the middle. So it's tough.
It is tough.
Debates aren't won by nuance, you know.
No, I don't think they're won by scripture either. And I want to come back around to that and just share for my I guess younger self.
Mm-hmm.
I was the type of person that would post scriptures, or quote scriptures and say, therefore this is what is true, and give my interpretation of the scriptures.
Yeah.
My perspective now is the scriptures are so personal. Each generation, even each person over time their interpretations can change of the very same scripture, right?
Yeah.
So as an expert bludgeoner of people with scriptures,
Sure.
a recovering expert, right? I've found, at least my approach at this point is, when I share a scripture, it'll be from, this is how I feel about this. This is how I interpret it, which has led me to act in this certain way.
Sure.
And allow the space for someone might interpret it differently than me.
Yeah.
And encouraging or inviting others to make it personal instead of using the scriptures again as a bludgeon to tell someone what they should be doing instead of telling someone why you yourself are choosing to do something.
Yeah. No, that's a good.
And that applies to scriptures, quotes, anything. Like we can bludgeon with a lot of different tools.
For sure.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. That's good. Like, that's what Sunday school should be about, in my opinion, instead of kind of just like, here's the law, lay down the law. Like, if you're not following the law, then like there's no wiggle room kind of thing. Yeah. So just life is so very not that, so it's hard to apply that kind of logic, I guess, in the real world.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. When it comes to like prejudice and bias, I think probably the first step that we need to recognize is like that we have it, and that there's no, everybody's like, I'm unbiased. It's like, that's not possible, but being able to recognize it is when you can kind of like be able to check yourself once you're like getting into it. At least that's how I feel. Do you?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And even if we can't identify every individual bias or prejudice, just having just the understanding that I have I have bias and prejudice, and if they flare up, then I can identify them.
Yeah.
But it's the whole need no physician principle from Jesus' teachings. It's like, if we start from a position of I have no bias, I have no prejudice, which we all inherently do as human beings, when it flares up, we're unwilling to see it. Whereas if we have a little bit of humility that, well, I have it, and maybe I don't know what it is yet, but when it comes, I'm going to try and address it, know? And if two people in a conversation can kind of start from that foundation, I think you can really get a lot of places as far as personally moving past that prejudice and those biases and growing in perspective by hearing the other person's perspective. Yeah,
no, I agree. It's the whole mote and beam in your eye kind of thing. Is that where you're kind of going with?
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just trying to think of like real world examples of this that I've like experienced or heard about and stuff. So, for instance, it's easy for me to find fault in the church, like no matter what. Like even when they do something good, it's like, well, but, tack on whatever. And just being able to recognize that, and like that's kind of maybe my, not my default, but like what I want to default to at least. And kind of being able to say like, no, like the church gave like $900 million this year, however they define that. Like that's a noble pursuit, you know, and I don't need to put a and or a but like at the end of that and like continue with that. Just being able to call out something good, you know, and recognize it and move on. And, you know, the flip side, like, I don't know if do you have any examples that you can think of like how a believing member might do that kind of same thing to someone who's left?
My brain was going
Sure.
more personally right now.
Okay.
If we maybe could come back to that.
Yeah, we can go back.
And I'll be thinking of a specific example. But for me personally, my faith journey, like I'd mentioned, I was raised very orthodox, almost in a way that the church could do no wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And when I discovered what I believe were some of the wrongs throughout church history, my perspective, the pendulum swung, and it was the church can do no right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then as I experienced more, kind of took a breath and engaged in the community and had lots of conversations with my wife and my family, I've kind of settled, hopefully in a more mature position, that the church, like any other institution, like any other individual, has a history filled with positive things, negative things, good things, bad things, right things, wrong things. And as far as I think this applies to individuals as well as the mainstream church, is we've all inherited the history of our predecessors as well.
Sure.
And we're trying to resolve maybe some of the mistakes that were made and move forward, as well as identify and accentuate some of the positive things that have developed in both realms of individuals' lives and generations, and institutional generations and traditions going back.
Yeah.
So that's where my mind was going as we were first talking.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
This.
It's the wicked traditions of our fathers, right?
And the righteous ones.
Yeah, and the righteous ones as well, right?
And maybe even wicked and righteous can become reductive.
Yeah.
Ultimately too, because they're both very subjective.
Yes. Yes, very much so.
And the traditions determine the definitions of
yeah,
righteous and wicked.
Yeah, agreed.
In a lot of ways.
To bring scripture into it and to put it bludgeoningly, right? We got a quote here from Russell Nelson.
Yeah.
You okay if I read it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I love that.
This is from a talk called Peacemakers. Is that?
I think this was Peacemakers Needed.
Peacemakers Needed.
A couple years back.
Yeah. If a couple in your ward gets divorced, or a young missionary returns home early, or a teenager doubts his testimony, they do not need your judgment. They need to experience the pure love of Jesus Christ reflected in your words and actions. If a friend on social media has strong political or social views that violate everything you believe in, an angry, cutting retort by you will not help. Building bridges of understanding will require much more of you, but that is exactly what your friend needs. I really like that. It's exactly what we're going for here, you know?
Yep, I agree. I think with individuals in various faith positions might think that quote's from Russell M. Nelson, therefore it's absolutely true.
Sure.
Others might think that quote's from Russell M. Nelson, therefore it's absolutely false.
Right. Or point out the hypocrisy with that versus some other things he said.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's like, it's true because it's true.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
It's true to me because I've experienced it. You know? And maybe there's more to it, but I think this is a good starting spot as far as the encouragement from the president of the mainstream church encouraging the membership to build bridges. And I think that is a good thing that we can connect on. And again, the intention of us talking now, you know, is I think we're good. Like, we've built bridges personally, but encouraging others to do so that maybe share similar faith journeys and positions that you and I individually do.
Yeah. Maybe one of the challenges to that is, there's a reason why I have some rules for myself on this podcast,
Sure.
and bringing up like big criticisms of the church
Yeah.
is one of those. And I think the reason I check myself with that is because, one, I don't want this to be another Ex-Mormon podcast that just deals with those, because there's plenty of them out there. But the other is that these kind of topics can get, the discussion can get very heated very quickly, because not only am I potentially criticizing this institution, this church, you identify with this church, you meaning not just you, but like who I'm talking with, right? And therefore you may be seeing this criticism as a criticism on you, and like, why would you believe something that I deem so, to put it in a word, silly maybe is, not that I'm trying to like be that way or whatever, but have you kind of come across conversations like that?
As far as criticisms and
like kind of things getting heated and
absolutely.
so forth?
I've been in the middle of them.
Yeah.
I've been the cause of many of them.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Because like, I don't want people to not be able to talk about those things.
Yeah.
It's this fine line, right? Where be able to talk about the issues that I've got, the questions that I have. I would hope that members also feel comfortable, like sharing their beliefs and their testimony with me. But how do we not like let those like light a flame under the conversation so that it is pouring gasoline on that kind of thing? I don't know. Do you have any experiences or ideas that have helped?
Well, the next line in my note,
Sure,
I think does tie in really well.
Okay.
So I've been watching another Apple TV series called Ted Lasso, which I'm sure will bring a little bit of judgment towards me.
Sure.
And I would be judging myself 5-10 years ago would be judging me right now. And so I get that.
It's a great show.
It is a great show.
I love it a lot.
As far as some standards that maybe wouldn't fit others
Sure.
and my own.
Yeah.
It's like, I get it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying I welcome the judgment, because I don't like feeling judged,
Sure.
but I understand it. And I think that's an important thing to have some space and grace for people, especially when we've been there.
Mm-hmm.
Because chances are they haven't been where maybe we're at. And it's not just religious realm, but any realm, that if we can understand someone because we've been there, that really is a good starting space and place internally to give that benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
For that. So Ted Lasso.
Okay.
He says, he's quoting Walt Whitman, but it's a simple quote: "Be curious, not judgmental." And that's really been significant for me as I've thought about prejudice and some of my motivations behind when I feel that prejudice towards someone, and I now need to tell them, by bludgeoning them with scriptures or quotes, I need to tell them now how to live and how to repent and how to change. And I got to the point where I realized that for me, judgment is motivated by a need to control others,
Okay.
their beliefs, their actions, their mentalities. Whereas on the opposite end, we've got curiosity, where that to me is a manifestation of the allowance to let another control themselves. And that's an important thing, because if I'm controlling someone else, they're not learning anyway.
Right.
And that can cause resentment if it's not with someone's free will invested into a decision. But if it's based on someone else, they may feel betrayed later if they're like, I trusted you and you let me down. It's like, if we allow that and we share our perspective and belief, and then allow them their perspective and belief, that prejudice kind of just dissipates, I feel like, for my experience internally. And curiosity kind of sums that up
Yeah.
It's like, well, so where are you at? Like, how do you see life?
Sure.
Instead of how do you see things?
Yeah.
It's a different
Yeah.
different tone, a different meaning behind that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably something that needs to be done in the self that, like, how would I put it? I guess, like, I'm imagining someone, like, sharing their testimony to me, or, like, whatever. A testimony doesn't have to end with "in the name of Jesus Christ, amen" kind of thing, but just like their experiences of, like, them feeling God or something like that. And as an atheist, I kind of, like, have my own thoughts about that, but just being able to still be curious, and again, not bring, like, an and or but or, like, did you know at the end of it, just kind of goes a long way. And just being able to kind of sit with it and, like, no, this is what somebody has felt and experienced, and they've had, the things that have happened in their life that I probably would have made the same decision. So who am I to judge them for having this certain belief or something like that? So it just takes a level of introspection and being able to, I guess, not be triggered is the best way to put it, by, like, what someone else says. Like, sticks and stones can break my bones, right? But words won't hurt me. And yeah, end of the day, just being able to understand someone more goes so much farther than being able to debate someone on why their view on history, on belief, whatever, is incorrect, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to the us and them,
Mm-hmm.
different perspective. If we're debating someone in a competition, like, competition inherently means there are sides, right?
Right.
But if it's an us that we may debate, but if the intention is to grow and learn and gain perspective, I mean, that's a team effort,
Yeah.
because conversations are hard. It takes mental exertion to articulate thoughts, and being vulnerable emotionally. Like, our beliefs are really deep, and if we ever feel like they're attacked, then from whatever side of the bridge, it can be really upsetting, and just that reassurance and taking the active approach of nurturing the relationship so that the debate or the argument doesn't get in the way of that connection. And then the relationship can grow through those difficult conversations that maybe each of us have to look at things a new way and have the thought, maybe I'm wrong about some things. And that space is a great place to grow. Just kind of concluding some of my thoughts as far as prejudice and just judgment towards other people, and the motivation inherently being to control them. As I've done some of, like, the internal thought processing and emotional processing, it's like, okay, is that out of love? Like, do I care about them, or do I care about me? And I'm really afraid for them. And those things are real. Like, those things could have some, we have legitimate concerns about, well, maybe we won't be as close anymore. Like, those concerns and those risks are inherent with any relationship that we're willing to be vulnerable with. But as far as controlling others, I've been motivated so much by shame in my life. And I feel like that's been a fear for myself, and a fear that I've felt from family members that I believe do love me, but have been afraid for me, and so these rules and these distinctive lines that are kind of enforced by shame, it's like it's only motivated me for so long. And then it kind of cycles back into that shame cycle. Whereas fear versus love, if love is the motivator, the the enforcement or the power behind the love is empowering someone, and that comes through education, just growth and maturity, faith in someone that even though they might make a different decision than I would, that they'll grow through their personal experiences instead of me dictating again what their experiences should be. And if it's not that way, they've done something wrong.
Yeah.
So hopefully in a roundabout way, we can get to this idea of like empowerment is, for me, the ultimate motivator. It becomes an inherent thing instead of an external force on us.
Yeah.
Which just, we don't have to babysit. We don't have to wring our hands, be in constant worry of the people that we love. But again, just the acceptance that comes with that curiosity of life. Okay, what type of person are they going to become?
Yeah.
And I have opportunities to influence them for good, but ultimately it's their life and
right, their decision.
Their decision, yeah.
Yeah. Totally agree with that. There's like, for me, I always kind of come back to, I don't want to say I don't care where people end up, because I do, I care about their experience and their person and like their livelihood and everything like that. But at the end of the day, for me, it doesn't matter, I guess, like as much which side they fall on end of the day, because that may change, first off, 10, 20 years from now, they could go back. I never thought I would be where I am today, looking back 9 years ago on my mission, So just being able to let people, like you said, have that power to dictate their own life, and just kind of validating them in where they currently are and their journey and everything that goes along with that, and just being able to kind of accept, say, like, it can be very difficult what you're going through right now. If you're having doubts, if you're having questions, maybe someone, has never doubted really like their entire life, and they're feeling like really good about things. And I can also just like accept that and say like, hey, this person is happy and thriving in the church. Who am I to maybe bring my doubts and questions to them necessarily? Like, are they the best person for me to talk to about this? Maybe not. Maybe they are, and they're, very accepting and willing to listen to my story. But also that could just be something that like, I don't want to necessarily harm that.
Yeah.
Said before, I'll say it again, that I've got lots of family and friends that I think they are much better off being believing members of the church than if they were to not be. So like, good for them, and I'm happy for them, and genuinely, Yeah.
If life's working for someone, in a way that's not harming other people, it's like, why would we want to disrupt that?
Right.
From either position of this metaphorical bridge that we're talking about. It's like, if I had a friend just recently, he said, my sister and her husband, they've left the church, and another one of my friends left the church, and they're doing better off than when they were in the church. And he's very active, pretty orthodox guy, and we have pretty deep conversations that I really appreciate. And I didn't want to like encourage him one way or the other. It's like, you and your family, you kind of need to figure that out. But I think it's a healthy thing to notice and acknowledge that maybe some of the fears that we had, like if I left the church, then my life would fall apart. It's like,
right.
No, I can observe people that they're doing fine.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if people stay in the church, then they're gonna, whatever. I'm not even super familiar with all of the different perspectives, but there are valuable reasons to stay. They're valuable, valid is the word I'm looking for. Valid reasons to stay, valid reasons to leave.
Yeah.
And they're all very personal.
Yeah.
And respecting that is it's a hard thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Hard thing to learn and practice and exercise the muscles, because because it can become, I think, a practice and become easier, but it's a very valuable thing to learn how to do.
Yeah, kind of like, saying that people can leave the church and they seem better off. There are also instances where people leave the church and maybe they aren't doing as good as they were. And I think that does happen, right? To acknowledge that it doesn't would be silly. But I think something that was said to me one time as I was kind of exiting was basically like, what are you going to do when you go through something like really difficult? Like, whatever that could be, death, close to me, illness, whatever. Kind of with the sense of like, you're abandoning God right now. Anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is like sometimes I feel like members see those instances where people are worse off. Maybe they do become addicted to something. Maybe they do make some poor choices. And they kind of see that as a validation of their own belief system that, like, well, see, I know better, right? But then on the flip side, I love to flip back and forth. How does this apply to the other side? Perhaps I see people in the church that I feel like they are worse off in the church in this moment. I think specifically one that comes to many people's minds is like being gay and being a member of the church. There's a lot of people. I've got a friend who's out of the closet, married to a woman, has a few kids, and he's a very, stalwart member of the church and has his own podcast and so forth. And a lot of people give him grief and kind of saying like, how could you like stay a member of something that's so harmful to people like you, and he has his reasons, and like, again, who am I to use somebody else's experience as a validation of my own? I think that's a trap that people often fall into, and I would much rather just validate someone's experience and let them live and let live,
Yeah. Just recently in Elders Quorum, we had a discussion, and it came up, and it's come up a couple of times where people are like, well, people leave the church because they want to sin. I think you addressed it in one of your first episodes. Mm-hmm. And every time that comes up, I've kind of got in my back pocket, so to speak, Dieter F. Uchtdorf's talk that says there are many reasons why people leave, and they're way more complex. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they want to sin. Like he addresses it very directly. And I think that's so valuable to find. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of because of authority, therefore it's true or false. Yeah. But for those that authority is such a significant thing, it's like, there's authority on both sides of any topic within the church, and there are authorities on both sides of any topic outside of the church too, and just trying to connect with people coming from their understanding, to connect with them and ultimately to help broaden my own and broaden their perspective. And again, I said ultimately, and now I'm going one step beyond ultimately, to improve society, to improve our personal health, our relationships. And if we can make those connections, again, those important parts of life with our relationships and societies, they improve all along the way.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, I don't know if we have time to get to all of the things we wanted, or that I wanted to,
Sure.
but I did want to not miss this one. When it comes to faith and belief versus knowledge, like it was modeled to me, I would say, from my family as well as from my local congregations growing up, to bear testimony in I know ABC.
Yeah.
And over the years, as I've experienced things and had my pendulum swinging and my faith transition, and probably transitions, there have been a lot of things that have changed. But over the years, it's like man, do I know that?
Sure.
Maybe I don't know that. I believe that. Maybe that's more accurate to say. I believe that this is true. And then with other things, I don't know if I even believe that that's true, but I hope it's true.
Yeah.
I hope in a resurrection. I hope in an afterlife. I don't know that because I haven't experienced it, and I haven't experienced secondhand that. I've heard a lot of testimonies. I've felt positive feelings about things that I've interpreted as a confirmation of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
But so what I'm trying to get at is there's power in, I don't know, but I want to know. You know,
Yeah.
I believe in something. I hope in something. Like there are many things that I considered myself knowing that now I just have to acknowledge to myself, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think there's some liberation there. I think there's power there. That's not a weakness to say, yeah, I don't know. Because in some ways it's a weakness when we say we know something and we don't really know something.
Sure.
Because then we're acting out of maybe an unknown with the impression that we do know, and it can put us in hard situations versus if we go, it goes back to curiosity. If we come from a position of, I don't know, but I want to find out, we're curious about life, and therefore our minds, our hearts are open to experiencing something that maybe we hadn't considered before that could change our lives, change our perspective, change our dynamics in relationships. And
Yeah.
so I think that's important. There's I think a level of pride, speaking from my personal experience, of I know this is true, and if you question it, you're false. Like what you're saying is false. But if it's, I don't know, like, what do you think? Then there's that curiosity and openness that comes.
Yeah. Yeah, I recorded an episode right before this one with my friend Stevie, and she kind of shared going through her faith journey, like sitting in church and listening to people say, I don't know, was like very emotional for her. She's like, but how do you know? You know, I don't. And I've been to a few testimony meetings since my transition out, and again, it's something similar. It's like, it's part of our culture. It's part of that once a month, get up there and share your testimony. And
we've inherited those traditions.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But I have also heard people at times, even growing up, I remember like one of the few testimonies that stands out in my mind is like this neighbor of mine who said like, I don't know. And she's like, I believe and I hope and I stuff like that. And maybe at the time I was kind of like, oh, you know, kind of like if only she knew as much as 17-year-old me knows, you know, this grown woman. But like looking back on that now, like that does stick out in my mind, and it just seems way more genuine because anyone can recite the phrase, I know that Joseph Smith was a prophet, but to say, I believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet, and to kind of like give your reasons why, like I can respect that a lot more. Or like, I don't know for sure, but I hope he is. And like, because of these certain teachings that he's taught, like I really hope that that's the case. And I'm going to live my life as best I can in accordance with that. Like, I don't know, something about that I respect like so much more than just like, nope, I'm sure, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a unique aspect. And talking with Stevie a minute ago, it's until someone's kind of gone through the journey, at least a little bit, it's hard to understand, empathize, whatever. So there's just different levels, and people are in different places, and you kind of have to respect where they are and recognize that, yeah, there's just different experiences out there from your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool, Ashton. Any last things you kind of wanted to bring up before we wrap up?
I think just broadly, I wanted to maybe talk about how this applies within families, because I don't think there are many families that it doesn't affect nowadays, as far as bridge building between whatever faith journey we are on. Every family is affected in some way.
Yeah.
Whether it's even just extended family, and that affects the conversation. And maybe we double down because we're, again, out of fear that we don't want our...
Look what happened to cousin so-and-so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'll close with this thought. I had a thought and I lost it, but this one will apply pretty well. So
Sure.
My wife and I, we were heading out on a trip out of the country to New Zealand, where they drive on the left side of the road.
Okay.
And my dad was awesome. He agreed to take us to the airport, and as we're heading down, he's like, "So in New Zealand, they drive on the wrong side of the road, right?" And I'm like, "Well, they drive on the left side of the road. It's not the wrong side." And it was just, it's a perspective thing.
Yeah.
And I guess it goes back to what I'd mentioned earlier. If I were in the position of someone else who's making a choice that I disagree with, maybe strongly disagree with, if I had all of their upbringing, if I had their experiences, maybe a couple of traumatic ones, would I not make the same choice? And I think it's less about what's right and wrong, and that might be kind of a controversial
That's a whole philosophy thing.
Yeah, the right and wrong, I guess, going back to something else I'd said, they can be subjective. Sure. That's
a better way
kind of what I'm trying to get at. When it comes to the right side of the road or the left side of the road, it's just subjective. It's just a choice that was determined. And as long as everyone's driving on the left side of the road in New Zealand, we're good.
Yeah.
If everyone's driving on the right side of the road here in Utah, we're good, Yeah. And acknowledging it in those ways, well, it's just different.
Sure.
It's not right and wrong that we need to judge, but we can still have those connections with our family members. That's right. What I'm trying to get at. We can still maintain those relationships if the respect can be maintained as well.
Agreed.
And that's my conclusion.
All right. No, I love it. Well, thank you, Ashton, for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the conversation. And it's just something that I'm still working on.
Me too.
Probably be doing this for the rest of my life,
Yep.
And we just appreciate all our listeners tuning in. So remember to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And again, if you can financially support the podcast, there is a link in the description below. I appreciate it. We will see you next time on another episode of Latter-day Bridge Builders. Thanks.